Well, it's a very dark day that's coming. So Doug passed a year ago. There's still many questions about what happened. Some people have gotten on me for letting the possibility be that it was not quote a natural death, but yeah, it's very disturbing. However, this video is not a pure tribute. So if you just want pro Doug feelings, that will not be this video. We're going to be going back and forth with Doug. This is not a video to trash him, but we will be, I think, somewhat honest because we now have more information. And again, I'm not really greatly disturbed by this, but Doug was a much more violent and deceptive person than he put himself out as. Again, that doesn't really change my opinion. I still think he is what he was, a very powerful and interesting truth teller. And again, this is not a slander, but a dedicated conspiracy theorist. But unfortunately, a conspiracy theorist who sometimes was led astray. And if you're just jumping into the quote Scientology, ex-Scientology space, this may be a little overwhelming. I have many other videos, so I will try to provide as much context, but we will have to go in somewhat quickly to make this video manageable. So unfortunately, we'll have to begin with Nora because a major subject that Doug focused on wasn't just cults, and it wasn't just Scientology. He went through so many other cults, and I have not been able to get even close to a percentage of his huge archive. I mean, he covered a lot. The Son of Sam and cults possibly related to that, including the process. Just so many other cults, and he was very, very thorough. He wasn't always correct, but he was very dedicated to his work. Unlike Nora, who also touched upon controlled opposition, quote, in Ex-Scientology, but somehow manages to be lying and lying very dramatically about the whole subject.
Mike Rinder and his, hounds from hell would go out and do that work, right? And we see the after effects of that. One of those hellhounds, okay, who's still on.
Well, some of what Nora is saying is true and has been vindicated, that Rinder and Aaron definitely were trying to control the narrative. Now, the dilemma is, and this is where Doug was a much better person and much more honest and truthful. And again, to be fair to Karen, he and Karen did not get along with one another with good reason. So who is Karen? Well, Nora, we can explain very quickly. She was a delusional person who joined the Sea Org, was had a very bad experience, left that, and drifted into being a fake activist for years and years. Still is a fake activist, and she's much more friendly to Karen. So who is Karen? Well, that is the question. I don't think we know who Karen is. Formally, she is the ex-wife of the head of Scientology, Heber, and Heber was basically kidnapped years ago. Where he is, we really don't know either. Apparently, he's being monitored or kept prisoner in some old age home somewhere. So, yeah, it's very disturbing. And she tragically lost her son to Scientology as well. So she's either a very tragic figure or a very disturbing figure. But either way, Doug wanted to question her authority. And again, I'm going to agree to disagree because I do think he got a lot right, but sometimes he did let the tinfoil take over a little bit too much. Again, a very good person, I think, at the end of the day, and very much compassionate, but sometimes I think he was a little too dedicated to his conspiracy theories.
And they're all Sea Org. So there's a controlled opposition built around what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. And I would say that Mike Rinder and stuff like that will only take the truth so far because him and all the other people have an unspoken thing of here and no further. There are certain things we can't talk about. Guys, seriously, if you just use 2 brain cells, no offense, and this isn't any hit directly at Rinder, because I know he's been through a lot and I know he's changed, but I'm under no delusion and haven't been. And a lot of us that have been scared to speak out about this because of the blowback, there's a lot of people that know that. Let me explain this. What Mike Rinder is, just to put this in context, he is the equivalent of the head of the CIA for 20.
Back on Doug, it is true that Rinder in Scientology and OSA can be compared to the CIA very carefully. However, at the end of the day, it is not the CIA. It is not literally the official government It is not an official spy agency. It is a kind of spy/PR wing of Scientology. And I think, again, Doug just had sometimes a weakness or laziness and wanted to believe things that were not true. And as far as I know, we just have no strong evidence that the CIA met with Rinder or Rinder met with the CIA. He also does this thing mockingly saying, oh, he spoke to the FBI. Again, whether you like Rinder or don't like Rinder, this needs to stop. There is evidence he spoke to the CIA. And it's actually very disappointing because Doug was quite a reader. Whatever you think of the man, the guy was voracious in his reading. And this is a fairly basic text. You would think in anti-Scientology, I read a credible source that went into this. Again, it's not a perfect source. And that source verified, yeah, Rinder did speak to the FBI. And Doug just spoke to the FBI. Should I be impressed? Well, yes, if he spoke to the FBI, he spoke to the FBI. But let's focus on the good part of Doug, that, yes, Karen was very suspicious and a very tricky customer, so she can legitimately be spoken of and discussed. But not according to Nora, because you see, Nora's willing to talk about Rinder and Aaron, but Karen is magically missing.
On the loose is Stephanie Hutchison, right? She used to be in every forum and would report back negative stuff and go get it deleted, because who was the head of most of those ex-Scientology forums? How they got to be the head of it? Aaron, Mike, Mark, and Claire. Okay.
For those not getting my dark sense of humor, she is correct. Yes, there were these various forums where people were being monitored and spied on and controlled. But several problems here where she goes into the hellhounds, right? Like Stephanie. And that is definitely true that Stephanie is, to put it mildly, a very dedicated fan of Mike Rinder, has made some major mistakes. However, Stephanie has also got a lot of things right. The problem is she's getting things right about Aaron, which Nora couldn't care less about, but she's also getting things right about Nora and Marilyn Honig and some of the monkey people that Aaron attracted, at least briefly, because Aaron had Nora as a hellhound until she went solo and independent. So she's willing to blow the whistle that Rinder was monitoring or looking at all these forums. But Karen, who was an official administrator, right? For some of these forums, some of these groups, she was literally the official leader. Somehow her name does not come up. Nora just forgot about her, right? And if you look closely at a lot of these documentaries, you know who's there in the background? Karen. And not just Karen, but Jeff. And I'm not going to go into the details, but, and this is not ancient history, Jeff did some very questionable things with apparently a coroner report. And I know this case pretty well and was misleading people with some very ugly information to try to discredit a victim's story. Right? And what is Nora's reaction? Yeah, Karen and Jeff are great guys. I'm not going to be talking about Karen or Jeff. They're good people. Okay. So let's keep it very clear. So Doug had many problems, many issues. But I do think at the end of the day, he was a genuine whistleblower. Did he get things right all the time? No. Did he have his problems? Absolutely. He had major problems. And now we're finding out these problems were a lot bigger than we suspected. So Doug was not always honest or truthful about presenting himself or the state of affairs. And he did definitely have his biases and his favorites. I'm not even going into all of them. But unlike Nora, I will be honest. And I don't know this exact video, but in one of the videos, I hate to say that, but he did refer to Nora positively. So to make it, well, to be blunt, yeah, Doug sometimes had major failures. It is what it is. However, he was more good than bad. He was more right than wrong and willing to shine a light on some dirty corners. And so we're going to get briefly into Aaron's criminality. Again, I've already done commentaries on this. I'm not really interested in Aaron's criminality as much as Doug's reaction.
She would try to de-escalate, and so was the boyfriend, until he did it the fifth time and got sent about. That's the what I understood.
So let me ask you something. So some of the bartenders inside said that they heard your conversation. Okay, so I'm gonna just spit out what they told me.
Go ahead.
Basically, you were talking to this girl, and I heard, the word is that you didn't just say her she was crazy.
And the guy came over and kicked his ass. Okay, so that's the end of it. Like I said, we're not just going to sit here and just rant on a million things, but I can see why they might want to distance themselves, just at least from the.
So this may be a little jarring or confusing if you're just coming in totally new, but basically Aaron, while running for political office, decided it was a good idea to try to hit on a woman in Scientology. This woman is technically a celebrity, so we can talk about her full name, but I'm not going to do that here. Anyway, she was with a boyfriend, and Aaron thought he would be very clever to try to hit on her, mock her repeatedly. This wasn't just a one-time thing. As the police report and the witnesses make very clear, this is repetitious behavior. So the boyfriend finally got tired and it got physical. Aaron got knocked out. And like being the whiny, narcissistic, neo-fascist, pro-dictator nutcase that he is, lied about it. He lied about it twice. First, he said, obviously this was an OSA operation. It was not. Then, now he says, guys, it's not an OSA operation, but, it's very suspicious. It wasn't suspicious. And this does verify what Nora was saying, that Aaron's job, aside from controlling information, was apparently try to use these forums to find women he could date. By the way, he was married at the time with children. So yes, he's going late out night, drinking, having a good old time. It's like, what about your wife and kids? Well, there you are. There you are. So I'll let Doug have a little bit more fun because he's like, he's obviously having a little enjoyment looking down at Aaron. Yeah, that's basically what happened. Aaron got knocked out. He obviously felt very embarrassed that he was physically checked because Aaron's a big guy. But apparently, when it comes down to it, he will fold. He's not that tough. And it looked really embarrassing. So he's had to double down and created this massive conspiracy after it was kicked off the aftermarket for things like that. And there's this weirdo, bizarro, Claire Headley and Mike Rinder are the Godzilla and Satan Hitlers who have been destroying the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. And unfortunately, Doug did want to believe a little part of that. But mythologies are nice. But here on this channel, occasionally, because again, believe me, I've tried giving a lot of people here the truth, and they just will not accept it. So apparently, I'm going to have to just give you the half-truth. But even that's probably a little bit too much for you guys. But the real half-truth is this, that Claire Headley's not working for the CIA. And I see no evidence that the CIA wants to work with Claire Headley. Sometimes a pipe is just a pipe. But Doug really wanted to believe that Claire and Rinder and Aaron were tormenting him. They definitely exiled him. They definitely minimized him. They lied about him. But at the end of the day, we have to be careful here not to see the OSA CIA everywhere, which unfortunately Doug did. And he empowered some pretty nasty, awful, stupid people. But he was a champion. He was a fighter. And I think he was a genuine whistleblower. But he got things sometimes remarkably wrong. So I think if you're going to get into this space and you want to be serious about the controlled opposition, there's not too many routes. You can take the Nora route of reframing things where you're the victim when really you're part of the problem, or do the Doug route. I'm trying to be part of the solution, but the solution may not be perfect or it may need refinement. Doug was a flawed man, but I think at the end of the day, a good man. Made a lot of mistakes, but he did do a lot of great good for this community. It's unfortunately that this community does not appreciate him. Hey, I'll be honest, they don't appreciate me, but it is what it is. You just do the work and hope that some bit of truth comes out. But yeah, I think he was really stuck on this Claire Headley is the devil kind of narrative in his head. And, Doug is a good guy, but sometimes he would just speak out of turn and offer his audience provocative rhetoric, but without much evidence. But I'm willing to be convinced, but I need a little bit more than Nora's whining about hellhounds. But good on Doug for pursuing these questions much more thoroughly than Nora. But being better than Nora is only the beginning. Hopefully we can go further than that. But Doug gave us that at least. And that I think we should be eternally grateful for.